Vermeer and the camera obscura. The camera obscura, a precursor to the modern camera, is an optical device that projects an image of its surroundings on a screen. The device consists of a box or room with a hole in one side. Light from an external scene passes through the hole and strikes a surface inside, where it is reproduced upside down, but with color and perspective preserved. The image can be projected onto paper or glass screen and can then be traced or produce a highly accurate representation. Many artists in the 16th century were speculated to have employed camera obscura to help them draw more accurately. Most considerably discussed is Jan Vermeer, a Dutch painter who excelled in portraying interior scenes that are composed with mathematical precision and suffused with cool, silvery light. Only 35 of Vermeer's paintings have survived, yet, only with a few exceptions, most of the paintings are characterized by a geometrical sense of order. Though there is no documentary evidence to prove his experimentation with a camera obscura, the skewed perspective evident in his works, in which the nearest objects are disproportionately large, and the out-of-focus impression conveyed by sections of his paintings tend to testify to the idea. Before eyes had been accustomed to the modern photographic camera's way of seeing, in 1891 Joseph Pennell was the first to suppose that Vermeer might have employed an optical device as an aid to his painting. Pennell noted, for example, an evident discrepancy in the scale of the two figures in The Officer and Laughing Girl. Even though the officer in Vermeer's painting is very close to the seated girl, he appears disproportionately large. The officer's head is about twice as wide as that of the smiling girl, but the perspective of Vermeer's picture is perfectly correct in a geometrical scale. The discrepancy arises because the viewpoint of the picture is unusually close to the soldier. Today, we are quite familiar with foreground objects appearing very large in snapshots, but in 17th century painting, this is rather unusual, and Vermeer's contemporaries would have made human figures in a composition of this kind more nearly equal in size. For centuries, painters had both a working and theoretical knowledge of perspective and understood very well that, to create a believable three-dimensional space, figures which appeared far from the viewer had to be represented smaller, while those which were nearer had to be proportionately larger. However, when the figures were relatively near to one another, as in the case of The Officer and Laughing Girl, there was an instinctive tendency to compensate for the difference in size and render what the artist knew rather than what he saw. Mainly, that the two figures are almost equal in size. An excellent example of this kind of compensation can be seen in a very similar composition by the Dutch contemporary Gerrit van Honthorst in his Proscurus. Here, the figures are placed in an almost identical position as those of Vermeer's painting, but they appear to be the same size. Charles Seymour tested the hypothesis that Vermeer might have been guided by the images he saw in a camera obscura. By observing similar objects in similar lighting conditions to the ones found in Vermeer's painting, through a real 19th century camera obscura, Seymour found that the resulting image exhibited qualities much like those seen in Vermeer paintings. In particular, the characteristic lion head finial of a Spanish chair appeared surprisingly similar to the one seen in The Girl with a Red Hat, right. They both glimmer with the so-called disk of confusion, or pointilles, as they are also called. The pointilles, a conspicuous feature of many of Vermeer's paintings, cannot be perceived with the naked eye and do not seem to be a likely stylistic invention. Rather, they seem characteristic of the image produced by the camera obscura. The fuzzy rendering of the tapestries in Vermeer's Lacemaker and Girl with a Red Hat recalls quite strongly parts of image produced in Seymour's experiment. Since then, a great number of studies have investigated the subject, and although most scholars now agree that Vermeer did in fact use a camera obscura, there is still a great debate as to exactly what extent he did so.